Hello, all. Welcome to week 7 of English 232 American Literature. This week we have a whole bunch of stuff to talk about, a little bit of housekeeping, then I'll be introducing you to this week's writers. After that, we are going to be talking about how to go about writing your final, a really fun extra credit option you have, and then, of course, what's due this week. So first, a little bit of housekeeping. My apologies, I'm totally behind on grading reading responses. Hopefully, I can be all caught up by Wednesday, but really just, being able to make time for all of this stuff with the midterms set me back. Um, Other thing is I'm making a small change to the syllabus. Originally, the plan had been for you to do a rough draft of your final paper early so we could do peer review, but just looking at the calendar, I feel like it's just too quick of a turnaround. I don't want to crunch y'all on time like that, so we're not going to do the rough draft and peer review. I would urge you, though, if you are struggling with your final paper, if you didn't do well in the midterm, go to the Writing Center in D. Vickers at Southeastern and get some help. I believe they're there Monday through Thursday. There are some really great grad students in there who can help you get that paper into shape. Your final paper is still due Monday, July 25th. All right. So now let's think about our ladies this week, Eudora Welty and Flannery O'Connor. As you can see, I'm referring to them as Faulkner's daughters. They're not really his daughters, but they are two important Southern female writers. And if you look at their writing, we can see some of the ways that his writing and his legacy kind of influenced their work. Like him, they're recreating the language and the feel of the South in their writing. Their stories really explore personal relationships as well as challenging moral issues. So they're not just telling nice small stories about individuals. They kind of have a bigger picture to them. And their stories that tend to observe the world without moralizing or giving these easy answers. Instead, they just sort of tell the world as it is, tell the story as it is, and leave it to the reader to determine what it all means. Eudora Welty. This is a great quote about her from your anthology. Welty said she wrote out of an impulse to praise, and her fiction is often a celebration of life and all its mystery and complexity, which you're really going to see in her writing, that there is this feeling of celebration, this feeling of joy in her writing. Even when she's writing about things that might be kind of dark or kind of difficult, there is this sense of praise in her writing. Flannery O'Connor, very different. Her writing tends to have a darker outlook. She's known for writing sort of gothic and grotesque novels and short stories. And here this quote really sums her up so well. She wanted to push the reader to experience a sense of something beyond the ordinary, a sense of the mystery of life. She wanted to shock the reader into recognizing the distortions of modern life that we have come to consider natural. For the almost blind, you draw large and startling figures, she has noted in an essay. So this idea that those of us in our day-to-day lives are almost blind, that she feels like most people don't really see the world around them, and in her writing she is trying to shock people into really seeing what's going on. And I think you're going to see in her story that things can get quite shocking. However, the other thing to know about these two women is that in their writing, they can be really funny. Welty, of course, like I said, hers is all about praise and joy, so her humor tends to be lighter. You're going to see that in the way that her characters tease each other, some of the silly moments in her narrative. While Flannery O'Connor's, it's much, much darker, and you're going to see this. Her writing, it really highlights the ways that her characters aren't perfect people, that a lot of them are sort of damaged or dysfunctional, and that's really what she's pushing, and that's really what she's making light of. So, for your reading response, Eudora Welty and Flannery O'Connor are both known for writing about the South with a keen sense of the language and the culture. When you read their writing, you're going to, especially if you're from down here, you are going to recognize the South and Southern people. But, of course, like I was just saying, they have these very different ways of looking at things. So, your job in your response paragraphs is to decide which story rings more true, which one feels more like the South you know, and why. Okay, so on to other business. Writing your final. Um, exact same prompt as the midterm. You're picking one of our three big questions. You're telling your own perspective along with some concrete evidence of where that perspective came from, and then using three of the texts that we've read in the second half of the semester to discuss different perspectives on the question. Totally the same. Um, Same number of pages, 4 to 6 pages, size 12 font. Um, just like before, at least one story should agree with you, at least one story should disagree with you. Really, the biggest difference is just in what stories you're going to be writing about. And these are the authors that you can include in your final. So, what can you learn from your midterm experience? Of course, you should take a look at your midterm grade and feedback so you know where you may have fallen down on the job before, and so how you can beef up your writing. Also, just this is just feedback for everyone. For each of your paragraphs, you want to make sure you're including multiple pieces of evidence, quotes, that prove your main point. You want to explain the evidence that you include. Now, here's the key thing. There are a number of y'all who included evidence, but the evidence wasn't actually supporting the most important point. You don't need to use evidence to prove a basic fact from the text. It's when you're making a judgment. That's when you want to use a quote to back it up and then explain that quote and how it backs up your judgment. So let's do a quick quiz. Here we have two possible sentences. Which one needs a quote to back it up? Do, 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 do. All right, it's the one on the right. So on the left, it says, in Sweat, Sykes beats his wife and keeps a mistress in town. Those are just the facts of the story. You do not need a quote for that. On the right side, though, this is the opinion of the writer. In Sweat, the character of Delia has a hard life, but the audience should see her with admiration, not pity. All right, you need to prove that. Prove that we, the audience, are supposed to admire her, not pity her. Okay, try again. On the left, Hazel's depicted as a foolish, childish woman. On the right, when Dover decides to drag the river for Hazel, he goes to Doc's house to borrow a net. Which one needs quotes to back it up? Do, 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 do. Time's up. That's right, it's the quote on the left. I'm sorry, the sentence on the left. That is an opinion. You have to back it up. Because someone out there might say, nuh-uh, Hazel's not a foolish, childish woman. And so you'd have to actually prove where that comes from. While on the right, if someone disagrees with you, it's probably because they just didn't read the story, right? That's the difference. So you want to, when you're writing your paper, you want to look for, okay, what are my main opinions that I'm putting out there, and what quotes can I use to back those up? Other quick thing is you guys have an opportunity for extra credit. So this is going to be due by midnight, July 25th, which is the same day, of course, as your final paper. And it's worth up to 15 points on either your midterm or your final. Basically, what I'll do is I'll grade the extra credit. I'll decide how many points it's worth. So if you do a awesome job, it might be worth 15 points. If you do a meh job, it might be worth 10 points. If you do a bad job, but like it's clear that you put some work into it, maybe it's worth 5 points. But I'll add those points. Basically, I'll look at your midterm and your final grades, and wherever those points can help you most, that's where I'll add them. So what is the extra credit option? It's pretty fun. There is a radio show called Backstory, and you just need to listen to one episode of the radio show, choose one or two stories that relate to the radio show, and then write about basically write about what you learn about the issue discussed on the show and how it changed your understanding of those stories. Okay, here's what it looks like. I'm sorry, that's a typo up there. It says 20 points. I should say 15 points. But basically, Backstory is a radio program where three history professors talk about a specific issue in American history. So, like, there's an episode all about how World War I affected the country going on. There's an episode all about sugar, right? So, all sorts of different topics. Um, you're going to choose one of the episodes that we've got listed down here, and basically you're going to listen to the episode, and for your reflection, you're going to answer these two questions. First, how did the episode change your understanding of the topic that they discuss? So, for example, there's one of their topics is mental illness, right? So after you listen to the episode on mental illness, how did it change the way that you think about mental illness? How does it line up with how you already thought about it? How did it surprise you? And then, second part, you're going to pick one or two texts and write about how the topic is reflected on the episode. So we have this episode about mental illness, which pretty obviously would relate to The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. So how did it relate to that story, and how did what you learned on the episode, how did it change or affect how you think about that particular story, and why? That's it. 1 to 2 pages, single-spaced. All you gotta do. And again, if you just submit that by midnight, July 25th, you can earn some nice extra credit. That is it for this week. Here are our assignments, here are our readings, and then, of course, our reading response. All right, have a good one.